on this subject of a depiction not necessarily worthy of who we know Mary is, I think similarly, there's an issue with the depiction of St. John the Baptist.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about it in as much detail.
But I'll just say quickly, that this is the ultimate prophet, right? I mean, he is the final prophet. He is the Elijah who heralds the coming of the Lamb, right? And so I expect to see, and in, whatever devotion to St. John the Baptist God gives me, I have to whatever imperfect degree, the recognition of him as like the totality, the completion of, all of these Old Testament strains through, be it Elijah or Moses or whomever. And what we get here instead just feels like, this reactionary, like, political agitator almost, or something.
And Jesus is like warning him to like go into his rebuke of Herod with the right reasons, and there's like a little bit of push and pull between them, and it resolves, like with the Mary thing, they resolve it in the right place.
But like there's a line even where St. John the Baptist says like, my followers will love it, like it's all about the likes or something, what I mean? And this is just so not like St. John the Baptist. I would have I did like this scene of Jesus and John the Baptist sitting together alone, again, one of these intimate encounters. But, I kind of just wished more to see. I was almost like, what they should have done was just gotten Jonathan Rumi to play John the Baptist, just like put on a different beard and like sit across from him. Like I kind of wanted to see more of a, like two guys on the same page, you know what I mean? Like, and also of similar stature. Of course, John the Baptist is not the Son of God, right? But there's something really noble about John the Baptist, that he was not the light, right? But he was sent to announce the light. So like I kind of, it's like, this depiction of John the Baptist is so dwarfed by Jesus. You know what I mean? And I kind of just wanted to get a little bit more of the gravitas of who this man.
I mean, you come off being a lot more impressed by Philip than by John the Baptist.
That's right.
Philip being a disciple who was sent from John the Baptist to Jesus.
Exactly right. Yeah, I really feel like we should get the sense of how John the Baptist, drew people to himself. And was unique, yes, but not just that. His uniqueness was not reducible to just being like some crazy guy. You know?
And this connects to one of my other complaints about the opening scene of the season is when Peter and Andrew are being interviewed together by John the Evangelist, and he's mentioning John the Baptist. Peter still calls him Creepy John, which he had called him when he was very skeptical about him early in the first season, and that's fine, that's where Peter was at. But even after he is the Pope and he, has grown and John the Baptist has been martyred, and they've heard Jesus say the things that he has said about John the Baptist's greatness, he still refers to him as Creepy John. And then when Andrew is talking about Jesus pointing out the Lamb of God, he says, behold. By the way, this is a moment for a Catholic where you're like in the Mass. It's right before you receive communion. Behold the Lamb of God. Behold him who takes away the sins of the world. So like to then interrupt that with a joke, like, so Peter goes, Andrew goes, behold, and Peter goes, I'm eating a new bug. And like, okay, like this. Look, I would not let that. I would rebuke a Catholic for making a joke like that if I was in a conversation with a Catholic. And it's like this lack of reverence or this lack of like, okay, there's humor, but like at what point, like Peter has changed since the beginning of the season and this scene, the first season and this scene. And that, he would have more reverence for him. It wouldn't still be like, now, we know that he probably thinks more highly of John the Baptist, but there's this sense, just like when Jesus says too soon, that like the seriousness of like the distance between here and there in terms of what jokes you might make or whatever has not been totally bridged.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it doesn't do justice to like Peter's conversion to have him like making those cracks even if he like doesn't really mean it.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like it goes back to what we were talking about in the previous season 1 discussion about like this lack of like irreverent sensibility
Mhm.
at certain points. Like, you know, like so it's not like they I don't want to like read too much into what they think of John the Baptist, but like
Yeah.
it is very like it's very jarring to hear that, especially in the context of that
I know,
scene.
I completely agree. And I really, actually, that for me, that was one of the weakest points, even in season 1, is I did not care for the characterization of John the Baptist. I feel like one of the reasons they did that is because they wanted to play him off against Jesus and just have them be very different figures. And you can kind of see why they did that. I mean, there's the sort of image that people have of John the Baptist as this kind of firebrand preacher. But I think that also to me highlights one of the, it's not a major problem to me yet, because I mean, this is 2 seasons out of several, but the scene where Jesus rebukes James and John, it's one of the only scenes so far where Jesus is actually sharp with anyone, which actually in the Gospels happens relatively often. You know, he's always saying things that kind of, you feel like would be kind of cutting, where every time in the show that you get a line that in the Gospels reads that way, they've kind of softened it, made it polite. He like says something like, "Oh, I understand what you mean," or "I'm sorry," or, you know, there's a lot of politeness that's kind of covering over any suggestion that he could have been sharp in that way. Where John, to me, is just sort of abrasive the whole time. And again, he does come off like a political radical, which they put that word into his mouth at one point. He says something about having to be a radical, you know, as something that he labels himself with approval. So that's just, it's very strange. And it doesn't, as you were saying, James, I think it gives the wrong sensibility about him. He should be someone that exudes a sense of holiness. I think maybe that's something that is more striking to the Catholic imagination, because we have this whole pantheon of saints that are very different from each other, but that, you know, there is this sense of what that means, you know, for someone to exude holiness in that way. And this characterization of John just doesn't have that.
Oh, by the way, when I was talking about creepy Peter saying creepy John, there's another scene where like Andrew says to Philip, Peter calls him creepy John, just going back to what we discussed before. And Philip says, no, that's good. Because Peter's about to be like, oh, why'd you tell him that? And it just made me think of the scene in the Old Testament with Elisha and the 2 bears that like devour the children who call him bald head, and like the contrast that we get.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in terms of like the level of reverence that's expected of prophets. And of course, he's the greatest prophet, John the Baptist.
Right.